friends, welcome back to a tutorial, another painting tutorial. I hope you're all keeping very well out there. I am painting something for charity. It's for a charity auction. So the idea is we are to pick a particular scene from a certain area and paint it, and all proceeds will go to charity. There will be an auction for all the paintings hanging up in this little cafe in Cork City, and there will be a big crowd there. There's going to be, it's just going to be fantastic. So a big charity auction, and I won't name the charity. I won't. All I'll say to you is that it's for charity, and I like to do these kinds of things every now and then. It's nice to share your gift, I suppose, and help people with what you can. This is my my gift, I suppose, so I'm going to use it just to help maybe the less fortunate in life. So I think it's a good thing. It's a picture of Cork City. It's a very well-known church in Cork City. Now, many of you may not be into this type of a painting. It's not a landscape as such. It's a landscape, but it's buildings on a river with reflections. So buildings, basically, painting buildings. It can be quite slow and tedious, but I'm going to take my time and maybe do 2 or 3 different parts of this tutorial because I want to go into some detail. So if you're trying to get to grips with painting buildings and creating 3D buildings and shadows and light and all that kind of thing, this will be an interesting tutorial for you. Very eye-catching. I have a photograph of the scene here, and there we are. That's a lovely picture of a church in Cork. I think it's on Pope's Quay in Cork City. A wonderful church, beautiful colours. I photographed this myself. So the idea was that we would go along this river, and we were only allowed to photograph a certain portion of the river. So let's say from one bridge right up the river to the next bridge. Between those 2 bridges, you have to pick a scene within that. So any kind of an angle, whatever's around in that particular area. So I saw this church. It was a beautiful calm day. I saw the reflections and I just took a couple of snaps of that. I think it's a very eye-catching picture. And it's a very famous kind of a landmark in Cork as well. So I'm going to paint it. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Quite laid back, but going into bits of detail as well. So I'm going to take my time. I want to give this the best chance of getting first prize. There are different prizes, first, second, third. So I want to give it the best chance of getting a good result and achieving a good price at auction as well. So for charity, it's all for charity. Everything goes to charity. So let's do it. Come on, let's try this and have a bit of fun. I'm looking forward to this. I've been putting it off for 3 or 4 weeks. I was kind of debating whether to do a tutorial for it because it can be quite complicated doing these things. A lot of people aren't interested in this type of picture, but some people are. And even if it's not your kind of thing for painting, you might learn a few little bits and pieces along the way and see about colour mixing and creating directions and creating buildings that look square and all this kind of thing. So let's go. Come on. I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll let you know at the very end of it all when it goes on the wall and when the bidding starts and all this kind of thing. I will let you know as I go along, and I'll let you know how much it fetched and how much fun it was and all that kind of stuff. All right, I'll kind of take you all through it. I might even take the camera with me down there and video paintings and stuff like that are hanging on the wall and give you a bit of an insight into what it's all about. Okay, I'll see you very soon. I'll be right back. I'm just going to sort out my bit of drawing. I'm going to sketch up very loosely on the canvas here before I start. All right, I'll see you in just a moment. 2. All right, my friends, here it is. There's the reference photograph. You can see it up there on your left. Very bright, colourful photograph. I have is 20 by 16 canvas, and I put a rough sketch of the buildings on here. Okay, you will notice my masking tape goes down at a slight angle. That's to create perspective. So we're kind of looking at a slight angle up the river. That means this bottom will have to be lower, and then these lines will kind of all come down and meet way off in the distance like this. So that creates perspective. You see how that gets sort of narrower as it goes to the left. That gives you the perspective in a painting. This might look okay if it was kind of looking straight ahead, but then if you do that, you're not getting the sides of the building if there's going to be no shadows, and it will look very flat. So when you're painting a building like that, always try and catch a bit of a shadow on the side, left or right, just a little bit. They're my colours. I have a nice variety of colours up there. I don't think I need to tell you what colours I have. This is kind of just lots of buildings and stuff like that. So let's crack on. I'm going to have a bit of fun with this. I'm taking a large brush. I'm going to put a nice simple blue sky up here. Now, blues. A lot of people get confused about different types of blues. I have Phaylo blue and Cerulean blue. I think a mix of these is quite nice for a painting. It gives you that beautiful kind of sunny blue sky kind of colour. Alright, French ultramarine is fine, cobalt is okay, but cobalt is a little desaturated for me. It's a kind of a soft blue, whereas French ultramarine or Phaylo blue, which I use, is a nice rich blue. It'll give you a nice rich vibrant blue. And I'm going to put a touch of cerulean cobalt in there as well, just to kind of liven it up, put a little bit of a greeny hue into it. That's all it is. So I'm going to add more white now just to make this nice and thick. I don't want to go too thin with the colour, and I'm going to just start at the top and start bringing that very thin. It's a very thin mix, look, a very thin watery mix. But what I do is I add more white to it as I'm going. That thickens it up. So a bit more white. And as this comes down, it is going to start getting lighter and lighter. So now I have enough blue on there. I'm going to just clean my brush fairly quickly and go right into some white. And I'm going to just start adding white into this. Now I might even add a touch of Naples yellow as well. The Naples yellow in a blue sky towards the bottom, it gives you that kind of a glow from the distance. You see that type of a kind of a whitey, greeny sort of glow. That's what I'm aiming for. Now I do want to keep the sky quite simple in this, but I think I might add just one or two wispy clouds going across eventually. But for now I'm just concentrating on covering the white of the canvas. Look, just keep going, merge all of that together. And we'll go up here now and we'll just kind of keep bringing the colours in together. We can soften these all together then later with the soft brush. Okay, now clean that colour off my brush again. It's very important when I'm painting skies like this, like a crisp sky, to keep your brush clean. Always just give your brush a quick clean every now and then. It keeps the colours fresh and it stops any colours kind of merging too much together. I'm going to go in with some white, thick white on its own. Just go along the bottom here with some thick white paint. And there's already paint on my brush, as you can see. It's just kind of going onto the canvas. Let's get more white. Down the sides of the buildings. Just keep going. Softening that. Let's just get a nice soft gradient now from the bottom all the way up to the top. Alright? Let's just soften. I could use my blender brush as well for this, but I don't think I need it. I think I might get away with this brush. And there we are. I think that's fine. Now you'll notice a sign of a dark spot up here. That's just the canvas. There's a little bit of a kind of a bend in the canvas up here. Just a slight bend. That's all that is. For when it's dried and framed, you won't even notice half of this, okay? This will be all fine when it's framed. The framing covers a lot of little bits around the edges, so it's very handy for that. That's our sky finished. Now, should I add a couple of wispy clouds or should I not? I'm thinking maybe not after all, because are we going to ruin it? Perhaps just keep it simple, I think, yes? I think we will, yeah. Let's move on to some of these buildings. And what I'm just going to start doing is blocking in colour. That's all I'm going to do. So this is the main building here. I'm going to leave that to last. I want to concentrate on getting these in, alright? I'm just going to literally get a small flat brush and just start popping in shades of colour that I can see. So I'm going to start from, let's just start from the left. Let's go from left to right. I'm just going to start popping in shades of colour which I can see. Naples yellow and white. I'm going to put that along here. Okay? And I'm just simply blocking in. They don't have to be perfect. I'm just going along, blocking in the basic colours of the buildings. That's all. And I'm going to simplify this now to a certain extent. What I mean by that is I'm going to take now some burnt umber. What I mean when I say I'm going to simplify it a little, you know, I'm going to make these basic shapes off in the distance very basic. It's going to be very loose. And most of the detail will come into play here, okay, in this area. I want the viewer's eye to be drawn to this centre, kind of off-centre church here. That's where I want the viewer's eye, you see. So most of what's over here on this side, I'm just going to make that very simple. That's what I'm going to say, that's the word I use. I'm just going to make it very simple and put an impression of buildings over there, just here and there. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Okay, so let's just put a little line like that, for example. There could be another one there. I am going to add a little touch of white into this one. I might put a hint of that bluey green. I might take a hint of black and just soften a bit of grey through it as well. Like all these little things, they just add a little interest. That's all it is. I'm going to put, it looks to me like a white across here. I'm just going to put white across there. But I'm going to kind of grade it ever so slightly as well. This is a good thing to do when you're painting buildings, to grade. What I mean by grading, and that's just a term I use, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. What I mean by grading is rather than having just a flat white line all the way across, you could just kind of add little hints of something through there. So let's maybe take a little hint of a very soft mauve and soften it across like that. Just a very, you see what I mean? A very, very soft colour. When I say grading like that, that's what I mean. If you have a building which is just white, so let's say a cottage, let's say you're painting a cottage or something like that, and it's just white. Well, if you paint on just white, it's just going to look quite bland, isn't it? So that's why I'd always add a little hint of a blue or a purple into the shade of the house, into the shadow side, or even into the white, I mean. Just add a very soft purple or a grey through the white as well. And it just really picks it up and it livens it up a little bit. Now, just go cut across under that. We have our dark side of that finished. Put a little bit more. You see, we could grade it now, put a touch bit more blue into it. That just, it just adds a little something. Well, I'm going to go phthalo blue, a rich phthalo blue down here. For the bottom half of this building, I can see there's a kind of a rich blue down there. I'm going to start with phthalo and then maybe just add a hint of black from one side, we'll say. And you can see now how that little bit just, you see how it just livens everything up. Let's put on some roofs up here. Black, a little bit of blue. That should give us a nice grey for a roof, shouldn't it? I'm not worried about details with a small brush, not yet. I'm just going to concentrate on getting all of these, just these rough shapes in, okay? And then, once I get the rough shapes done, I then kind of come along with a small pointy brush and add little details. That's generally what I like to do. and I find it just makes it much easier to get your colours just right first before moving on, because once you put your details in, it's going to be very difficult to change anything. Once you've little windows and all of that done, it's going to be very difficult to come back and change anything afterwards without kind of having to paint over everything all over again. Does that make sense? So that's why I would say just concentrate on getting all these little shapes painted in first, and then worry about your detail. When you're happy with all of these colours, then you worry about your details. Then you start putting in details. That's generally what I do. That's how I work. Okay. So now we have a nice little row of buildings in over there, don't we? Should we go ahead and do some detail? I'm going to zoom in. I just want to zoom in just to show you the details of all of this. Okay? I'm going to take a small pointy brush, little small detail brush. With that, now I just need to fix the focus on this. I don't want to kind of zoom in back and forward constantly. If this does keep zooming back and forward with my hand, I do apologise. It's very annoying sometimes. I'm going to just start putting in some windows. I'm going to take a bit of black. I think just a bit of black will do. I've kind of lightened it slightly with some white. I'm just going to suggest some windows. And this is what I mean by just loose. Look, just putting in some windows very, very loosely. Now I'm kind of looking at a slight angle on the canvas, so it's difficult for me to tell if my lines are absolutely straight. I can't really tell, it's very difficult, so it's probably slightly wonky or something. I hope not, but if it is, that's because I'm kind of looking at my canvas. I'm painting from an angle. I'm not looking straight ahead on my canvas, so it's much more difficult to paint vertical lines and all of that. It can be quite tricky. A bit of burnt umber, and I'm just going to kind of suggest little dark spots here and there, and maybe a little hint of windowsills underneath the windows. See, all these little things, it's just, they're small things, but each line represents an extra little touch of detail, and it just makes it much more interesting. And when people see these little details, they're more inclined to go forward and look into the painting a bit more. I'm just going to suggest very slight edges around all of these. There's one over here, goes into another roof. So, I mean, yeah, it's okay. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that now yet. It's okay for what it is, just a very loose suggestion. Down underneath, I know we have lots of shop windows and stuff like that because I walk this area regularly. There's lots of different cafes and restaurants down there, so there's lots of different windows, shapes and sizes, all of that. Little door here, little door there, maybe another window. You see, just little suggestions of detail, that's all it is. And I'm just darting my brush around as well, just to help kind of make it very loose. And you see, just suggesting, again, suggesting small little lines here and there. Making this just look busy. See already how that's just made it look kind of nice and busy, hasn't it? I do need to grab a little bit of cadmium red. Now, I had like, oh yeah. Sometimes I put paints away and I just cannot find them. I've so much in one corner. I just have paints and brushes and jars and all that sort of stuff all over the place. I'm going to take a little bit of cadmium red. Just going to pop a little cadmium red over here, just for a splash of colour. Again, a little pop of colour like this really catches the eye, I find. And even some burnt sienna as well. Okay, just like that, something simple. I'm going to take some black and I'm going to go in here and just start adding a bit of detail to this side. As it comes forward to the right, I want to start adding more and more and more detail as it comes along. So the idea is, as it goes off into the distance over here, it gets kind of very sort of soft and, you know, impressionistic. But when it comes more forward to you, you start to see a little bit more detail each time. Okay, that's the idea. It's just kind of lots of shop fronts along here, so you don't need to be too particular with all of this. Again, just very loose with your detail. Look, very loose. Now I'm going to take some white. I'm just going to cut across up here some white, just to define that line a little better. Then I'll take a little bit of burnt umber, cut that off from what's above, and then pop a few windows in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get a bit of black, and you see, just kind of, again, very loose touches of detail. And you can then kind of just suggest bits and pieces on the building. So for instance, if I just take a bit of white, and you know, I can see those little lights and darks here and there on the building. But it's just about being very suggestive with it. So all these little dabs of colour, okay, they will suggest that there's just little bits of this and little bits of that going on. Okay, just dart around on the canvas, adding little touches of colour here and there. I'm going to take a little bit of cerulean, a touch of that in there. You know, I'm complementing the painting by putting hints of similar colours across the painting here and there. So for example, there's no red in this, so but I'm just going to pop a little hint of red just there. Could be anything. Now you can see already how much busier that looks there, doesn't it? It looks quite busy. I'm going to just go up overhead and I will just suggest little touches of detail way off up here. They're just kind of rows of houses away off up in the distance. But you can't really tell that they're houses. It just looks like a lot of little bits of this and bits of that. So I'm going to just take my time. Take a bit of white. Pop some little dabs of white around up there. You see how already it looks like there's a lot going on. Now we have a nice tree up around the back of that. I'm going to just pop a tree in. Let's get some cadmium yellow with little phthalo blue. And I'm going dark, a bit of black. So it's a very dark, blacky kind of a tree. Okay? Dark blacky green. And we'll just fill that in very loosely. Then I'll take some black and burnt umber. I'll go down in here with some nice dark colour. And it just kind of merges away off and disappears, doesn't it? So you can see how I'm just really suggesting everything in this painting. I'm being very loose and suggestive with it all. Now, a little bit of light. The light is coming from the left hand side. So I'm just going to put some light green or some just yellow just here. Now, and that's that area filled in. So quick, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? I'm going to take a small brush and just highlight this. So what I'll show you what I'll do. Phaylo blue and some white and a little touch of magenta. I'm going to take that colour, I'm going to put it in here and highlight the shadow of that building. Although it's a dark shadow, you see how using that blue just really highlights it. And then I'll go in with some black and I'll darken it from the top down. I'm just going to allow that to just kind of soften down into the blue, ever so slightly. There we are. You see how that just brought everything to life very quickly. I cut across under here. And there we are. Now that's already one phase done. We still have a tree here, don't we? Let's pop that tree in. On the left hand side, let's get some phthalo blue and some yellow. Again. Okay, now that's a bit blue, isn't it? Let's warm that slightly. Let's take a bit of burnt umber into that. That's better, isn't it? Now, we are mixing this into the sky colour underneath as well. You have to remember that when painting with oils, because the sky is all wet. That's something to bear in mind when you're using oil paints. So, just be careful. You will have to kind of add a lot more paint onto your brush when you're doing this. Now I might go to a bigger brush for that because it just makes it much easier. I have a dry brush, some black, some phthalo blue, cadmium yellow. I'm going for the dark side here. This is going to be the dark side on the right hand side. So I'm just going to go along and darken that, soften it across. Okay, then clean your brush. Let me add some light to all of this. Cadmium yellow, a bit of white. And let's go and add a little light into this tree. And I'm also kind of softening this tree into the buildings as well around it, look. So, just making it all nice and kind of, it's almost merging together with the buildings. One last highlight, I think. Cadmium yellow with white. Okay, there we go. That's fine. I mean, that's all enough. That's enough. That's all I need for over there. I might actually just add a hint of the dark blacky brown. A little bit more on this side. But you need to be careful because the more you do on this, the bigger the tree will get. That's the, you see how much I have gone slightly oversized with the tree, but it's fine, it's okay. We have all of this done across here. I'm going to stop with the lovely red building here, so that's going to be my last part, I think. Lovely red building, cadmium red and a little burnt sienna. And I'm going to go to the dark side with this colour. Cadmium red and burnt sienna make a lovely dark, rich, deep red. So that's going to be the last building, I think, for this part, for part one. Or, you know, we might decide to continue on. Who knows? Then I'll take some Naples yellow into that mix. A bit more cadmium red. So Naples yellow and cadmium red, they make a lovely kind of a light, soft red, maybe a touch of white, tiny touch of white. And let's just cut that down in front of the rest of those buildings. This is quite wet, this paint. It's not very thick paint. It's, you know, a little bit on the wet side. We have that done. Next, I'm going to go back to my small brush. I'm going to take some burnt umber and a touch of black. And I just want to kind of darken this as it goes into the back of the church in there. See the way it just looks like it's getting darker towards the bottom of the building. Just adding little touches. Again, that's what I call grading the paint. So it gets slightly, you know, different or darker as it comes down perhaps. Okay, just like that. That adds a nice feature. Now I'm going to cut with this colour, I'm going to cut across under the roof. You see there's a shadow under the roof. Let's put that in. As we have the paint on our brushes, we might as well. Then we have grey roofs, nice dark grey. I'm going to go dark on this one back here, dark for this side, and then I'm going to lighten it as it comes around the front. So you can see now there's a lot of detail in this, and this might not be your type of painting to paint, but I think it's interesting to show you how you can approach a very difficult looking scene quite easily. It just goes to show, you know, you don't have to put a huge amount of details in a painting. You can get away with just suggesting something. And I'm going to just come down the bottom and just put bits and pieces across the front. There's a lot of different kind of bits and pieces going on. I'll put some dark windows at the back, and I can lighten them as I need with my detail brush. There's little bits of, I can see there's white around these windows, so I'm just going to add some white. You see how loose I'm being with this? Just very loose. It's the same back here. You see how loose I'm kind of doing all of this? I'm just very loose brush strokes. But I come back to all of this as well when I'm finished the painting, just to add a few extra little details when it's dry. Much easier to do this when it's very dry. Much easier. I'll go into some black, and I'm just going to just imagine just little windows in that. Tiny little windows. Okay, I think I'll stop at that. I'm just going to go right in again to some white and just pop a bit of white across these. So you see, again, I'm just suggesting. Maybe a touch of Naples yellow here and there. Look, it just gives the impression of a lot of things going on. You don't necessarily have to see exactly what they are, but it's just telling you a story. That's all it is. I'm going to put a little dab of black back here. I'm going to darken the back windows here just slightly. I think there's a little bit too much white on them. But you can see, it just looks like we've a lot of stuff going on back there, doesn't it? And then maybe just a touch of cadmium red, pure red, here and there, just to again catch your eye. Now, I think that's pretty good. I think I'm pretty much finished with that. Is there any more little details we could put in? I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. Maybe we don't want to be overdoing it with details, but at the end of the day, you know, we can pretty much do what we want. It's our painting, isn't it? We can do what we like. Within reason. Once it's somewhat similar to the photograph, that's all that matters. Okay, that's really all that matters. I'm going to peel off this section of tape just to show you what it looks like with a clean line. Okay, so there we go. That's a nice little view of some buildings already, isn't it? So it's amazing when we peel off the tape. You know, when the tape is like that, it just looks very messy with the paint coming down and stuff like that. But as soon as you tear off the paint, that clean line, it just brings everything to life, doesn't it? Isn't that amazing? So I'm going to just take my tape off around here. I don't need it all the way across. And my friends, I'm going to call this part 1 finished. Now when you zoom in, you see how all of those little details makes everything look nice and busy, doesn't it? I find that just fascinating. And there we are. It looks like a small little piece that's done, but when it all comes together, I'm hoping that it's going to look really, really good. I'm really hoping it does. So my friends, thank you so much for joining me in part 1. Sorry. My jigs and all this kind of stuff. I really have to pick up some proper stuff. I'm destroying everything. Thank you so much. I'll be right back with part 2. It could be an hour or so, but I'm going to just clean my palette. I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. Fix exposure on this. It's very difficult to fix exposure and stuff like that on cameras. It keeps changing itself. I really have to figure out the settings on the camera properly. So many settings on that screen. I'm not very good with these kinds of things. I'm trying my best. Let's crack on. I hope you're enjoying it. I'll be back very soon. I'll grab a cup of coffee and change my tissue paper, clean turpentine, and we move on and do this big church. I think that's the pièce de résistance in the painting, that big church, those colours. Let's try it and see how it goes. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.